warning today that he would scrap food and fuel subsidies. He said they were costly and ineffective. Mr. Ruto also said all cargo clearance would be reverted to Mombasa Port, a rollback to Mr. Kenyatta's order that saw port services transferred to Naivasha to ensure repayment of a Chinese loan taken for the construction of a railway between the port of Mombasa and the capital Nairobi. The policy positions were part of Mr. Ruto's campaign promises. And in Nigeria, the Electoral Commission says it has delisted more than 1 million newly registered voters after a verification process and cleaning up its voters' register. Those affected had registered between June last year and January this year in order to acquire permanent voters' cards. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, says during the period 2,523,458 people registered, but records of 1,126,359 registrants were discovered to be invalid and subsequently delisted. This means nearly half of the registrations were invalid. According to the Commission, double, multiple, and ineligible registrants were detected. It explained that it was using an automated biometric identification system in verifying the voter register. Moving on to Ethiopia, Tigrayan forces in northern Ethiopia have accused the government of conducting more drone strikes in the region's capital, Mekele. Getachew Reda, a senior figure of the rebel forces, tweeted today that civilians were killed in the strikes at a residential area. He has not provided figures of casualties, and there hasn't been independent confirmation of the claims. A doctor in Aide Hospital, one of the largest health facilities in Mekele, tweeted that 2 female adults went to the hospital with injuries sustained during the strikes. The TPLF rebels have been waging a near 2-year war against the government that has killed thousands. The latest airstrikes come after the Tigrayan forces accused the government of a similar attack yesterday. Addis Ababa has not yet responded to both accusations. Violence returned to northern Ethiopia 3 weeks ago after 5 months of relative peace. And in the United Kingdom, Prince William and Prince Harry are to walk together behind the Queen's coffin in a procession in London today. The brothers, along with the King, will follow the coffin on foot from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Hall, where the Queen will lie in state. The procession will leave the palace at 14:22 British Standard Time BST and is expected to arrive at Westminster Hall at 15 BST. A service lasting about 20 minutes will then be led by the Archbishop of Canterbury. The King's 3 siblings, Princess Anne, Prince Andrew, and Prince Edward, will also walk in the procession. Camilla, the Queen Consort, and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, will travel by car, as will Sophie, the Countess of Wessex, and Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. Moving on to Asia, China's leader Xi Jinping and Russia's Vladimir Putin will discuss the war in Ukraine and other international regions at their meeting later this week, according to the Kremlin. The two will meet in Uzbekistan at a summit that will show an alternative to the Western world, according to the Kremlin. Mr. Xi is making his first trip overseas since the beginning of the pandemic. He is seeking a historic third term, while Mr. Putin's relations with the West are at rock bottom over Ukraine. Mr. Xi is beginning his 3-day trip in Kazakhstan today. He will then meet Mr. Putin tomorrow at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Samarkand, which will run from the 15th to the 16th of September. Mr. Putin will also meet other leaders, including those of India, Pakistan, Turkey, and Iran, but his meeting with China's leader is of particular importance, according to the Kremlin foreign policy spokesperson. He said the summit was taking place against the background of a large-scale political changes. China and Russia have long sought to position the SCO founder in 2001 with 4 ex-Soviet Central Asian nations as an alternative to Western multilateral groups. And in the United States, inflation in the U.S. remained unexpectedly high last month, news that drove the Wall Street to its worst day in more than 2 years. Prices rose 8.3% in the 12 in the 12 months through August, the Labour Department said, faster than 8.1% that economists had expected. That was down from 8.5% in July, driven by lower petrol costs. The cost of food, housing, and medical care continued to surge, disappointing investors. The Dow Jones Industrial Average sank nearly 4%. The S&P 500 dropped 4.3%, and the Nasdaq plunged more than 5%. It marked the steepest day of decline since June 2020. For U.S. President Joe Biden, who approves ratings fell below 40% earlier this year amid cost of living concerns. The report was also a troubling sign ahead of the national elections in November. They will determine whether Mr. Biden's Democrats maintain their slim control of Congress. While Mr. Biden's ratings have recovered slightly in recent weeks as petrol prices have subsided, the issue remains a huge problem according to pollster Chris Jackson. And finally, Twitter's shareholders have voted to approve a deal with Elon Musk to buy the company for $44 billion. The decision was made in a short conference call with investors from the company's San Francisco headquarters. It means Twitter will now force Elon Musk to buy the company in the courts. The meeting followed explosive testimony from Twitter's former head of security, Peter Zatko, in front of the U.S. Senate. In April, Twitter agreed to sell the company to the world's richest person, Elon Musk. However, the deal soared after Mr. Musk alleged he was misled by Twitter about the number of spam and both accounts on the platform. He said he no longer wished to purchase the company in May, but Twitter argues that Mr. Musk cannot back out of the deal. Well, that brings us to the end of this afternoon's news in brief. Thank you for watching Channel 44. I remind you of the Karamoja cry. We are sending food relief to the people of Karamoja who are dying of hunger. Reports over the months have indicated that over 1,500 people have so far died of hunger in Karamoja district. It's a region comprised of a number of districts, and we have been able to deliver food in some districts in Karamoja region. Well, the need is still great, and we are looking at delivering another 100 metric tons of food. This is a fortified meal that has a combination of milk, sugar, of millet flour, rice flour, maize flour, oats, carrots, pumpkin seeds, a vitamin, a booster that will help them regain back their energy and revamp their bodies so that they can be able to stand on their own feet again. We call upon you to join us in the schools. We'll be delivering 50 kilograms of food to each household that will take them for at least 30 days. That will be enough to get them back on their feet and sustain themselves once again. You are welcome to join us. Send your contribution to the numbers that will be available during the services, or you can bring your seed here today at the Miracle Center Cathedral during the services. Pastor Robert Kayanja will be around. He will be praying for people that will be bringing their seed. And remember, it's a great deliverance service here at the Miracle Center Cathedral. God bless you. Have a good afternoon.